Hello and welcome to Military Mayday, where we're pointing out a few pieces on the chessboard. Got a little another thing from the Daily Mail. American troops in the Middle East targeted for the 25th time. Iraq base hit by drone strikes hours after White House said it's holding Iran accountable. U.S. forces deployed to the Middle East have been targeted for the 25th time since October 7th. The attacks came as two armed drones targeted the al-Asad airbase in Iraq, which U.S. international forces use in western Iraq to go after remnants of ISIS. Follows reported repeated attacks on the U.S. forces in the region and came on a day Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu quoted the Old Testament and declared this is a time for war, rejecting calls for a ceasefire. Israeli Defense Forces have been pounding Gaza, and Israeli forces have also begun operations inside Gaza as part of their effort to root out Hamas following the terror attacks earlier this month. The attack on the 25th and the attack is the 25th on the U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria since the 17th, which prompted the U.S. to unleash airstrikes on targets inside eastern Syria used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps last week. I think we proved pretty clearly that last night we're holding Iran accountable, White House National Security John Kirby said Friday. Here's that armed drones targeted the al-Asad Air Force Base. Can't really see any damage, but the methods of attack have included rockets and kamikaze drones and have injured 24 troops while killing an American contractor and come amid terse warnings from President Biden to any nations or factions not to exploit the turmoil in the Middle East. Really, Joe? The attacks did not cause either casualties or damage, resources told Reuters. U.S. and coalition troops have been attacked at least 24 times by rockets and drones in Iraq and Syria, according to the U.S. Defense Department website. The Biden administration has repeatedly vouched for Israel's right to defend itself, even while facing calls to pressure Israel into a ceasefire or pause of its offensive into Gaza. Netanyahu's response to the press conference rejected the idea, saying a ceasefire in Gaza will not happen and would not amount to surrender Hamas, to surrender terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. The Bible says there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war, the PM said. There has been a marked increase in attacks on U.S. forces since the conflict in Israel broke on the 7th, threatening to target the U.S. interests with missiles and drones if Washington intervened against Gaza. There's a Gerald Ford. Israeli forces have exchanged fire with the Hezbollah forces. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that is, but should we be in their area? Probably not. And some of this could be our own people hitting them. A group called the Islamic Resistance in Iraq has endorsed Tuesday's attack. On Monday, 4 Katyusha rockets were fired at Iraq's Air Force Base. Iran-backed militia groups in Iraq have consistently demanded the expulsion of the American troops after the U.S. airstrikes in Baghdad killed senior Iranian General Qasim Soleimani and Iraqi militia commander Abdul Baghdaadi in 2020. The militia group since then resorted to rocket attacks on U.S. forces in the country and embassy in Baghdad. These attacks stopped when Prime Minister Soudani nominated the Coordination Framework, the largest primarily bloc composed of alliance of Iran-aligned factions, assumed power last year. Calls for the expulsion of the U.S. troops have also been relatively quiet since then, but these demands, along with the attacks, have resumed a connection with increased Israeli bombardment on Gaza. Yeah, we're ramping up for war. In the latest such call on Monday, Iraqi politician, leader of the political and military barter organization close to Iran, urged the governments to take all necessary measures to set a serious, specific, and short-term timetable for the exit of international coalition forces from Iraq. Amiri's call comes from a few days al-Asad called on the Iraqi government lawmakers to close the U.S. embassy in Baghdad in response to Washington's unfettered support for Israel. Well, things just keep ramping up. But again, I think it's a slow cook. It's going to be years in the making. Probably by 2025 is when the end of 2025 is going to be when it's probably hitting hard and really starting to be scary. I'll put it to you that way. Anyways, you like the content, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Toodaloo.